Welcome. I'm Gayathri and I'm passionate about transformative coaching in the realm of life and leadership. My journey towards coaching started with an educational background in psychology and over 20 years of corporate leadership. Today, my commitment to help unlock limitless possibilities within each individual has culminated in the creation of my organization, Realize to Win. As a certified master coach, my philosophy centers around the power of the human mind and its boundless capacity for growth and achievement. My approach is rooted in the belief that with the right mindset, training, and guidance, there's truly no limits to what you can accomplish. My work is just not about reaching goals. It is truly about redefining the very boundaries of potential. Join me every week on my podcast, Catalyze Your Self, where we can dive into mindsets, experiences, and practical steps that will ignite your transformation towards limitless possibilities. I look forward to connecting with each and every one of you. Welcome back, everyone, to Catalyze Yourself, where we explore ways to be our best self through science, insights from real-life experiences, and real-life applications. I'm your host, Gayathri, and today we are diving deep into a topic that keeps many of us driven when we have it and hold us back when we have a lack of it: motivation. So, what is motivation? It is simply a force of mind, a force of will, a psychological force that influences our behavior and our actions. It is the driver of how we will move towards our goals and has elements of both emotion and mindset within it. When you have motivation, it gives you the desire to initiate, direct, and persist in the behavior and action that takes you towards whatever it is that you're targeting. It is what propels you to act, whether it is just a desire to eat or it is a long-term ambition like building a business or making a career change. If we break motivation into two major components, one will be direction, where you need to know where you want to go. What are your goals? The second part is the intensity of effort. This is where the initiation and persistence of the actions come to play. When we look at our motivation levels, typically what we find that it is the second bucket that goes on a pendulum, the intensity of effort part. So let's talk about it today. In our episode 12, let's focus on how we can sustain and fuel your motivation. High level, when we take a look at the studies and research and knowledge that's out there, we get a few themes on what truly impacts motivation. We have mindset, we have emotions, and then you have goals. And in this bucket, you have needs, desires, wants, and depending on who you are, where you are in life, and what you want, these could vary. With goals, it also has two different types of motivation or two different pathways for you to achieve motivation. One is intrinsic motivation, which comes from inside of you, and then you have extrinsic motivation, which is coming from factors outside of you. Intrinsic motivation is truly driven by personal satisfaction or your joy of just doing something. On the other hand, extrinsic motivation is like rewards coming in, money, validation, recognition, social approval. Research in neuroscience has shown that intrinsic motivation can lead to more enduring and self-regulated learning and achievement. What these studies show is when we have individuals that are intrinsically motivated, their brain neural pathways are engaged stronger. It's prolonged, enhanced memory and learning comes in associated with that task. So what does this tell us? It tells us that intrinsic motivation triggers neuroplasticity, which we know is our brain's ability to generate and regenerate and grow as needed. On the other hand, while extrinsic rewards can effectively motivate behaviors initially or periodically, their impact is fluctuating and tapers. What research show is that because If you have dependency on external validation, which is not typically very reliable or consistent, it does not always promote long term commitment and effort within you. So, overarchingly, what does this tell us? To truly sustain and fuel your motivation, integrating both the intrinsic and extrinsic elements is key. It is about aligning your deeper personal values and joys with external goals and rewards. Whether it is the pleasure of mastering a new skill or the anticipation of a promotion, understanding and balancing these motivation factors can truly transform your journey and your achievements. Now, the second factor that impacts motivation is mindsets. One that impacts the most is one Carol Dweck defined for us as growth mindset. The belief that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. What studies have shown is that a growth mindset can lead to a higher and more resilient form of motivation. People with this mindset are more likely to persist in the face of challenges because they see effort as a pathway to mastery. I won't spend a lot of time here as I've already gone into so much more depth in my episode 2, The Power of Growth Mindset. I would encourage you to listen if you have not already done so. For our session today, though, let's move on to our next factor that impacts motivation: emotion. While motivation itself is not an emotion, it is closely tied to our emotional states. Positive emotions such as joy, excitement, interest are all known to enhance motivation. And these emotions also increase dopamine levels in our brain. I know I've used dopamine as a label quite a few times in my sessions. I just want to take a moment to define it. For those of us not familiar with dopamine, it is a neurotransmitter that is closely linked with our brain's reward system. So it is a neurotransmitter that tells our brain to make us feel good, make us feel well, contented, feel contentment. Dopamine not only heightens pleasure, but also plays a very crucial role in motivating behavior as it helps signal the anticipation of rewards. There has been many studies, of course, that show that dopamine is an integral part of how rewards are processed in the brain and by extension, how motivation is driven. When we experience positive emotions, the increase in dopamine can enhance our motivation by making these activities leading to these emotions more appealing and rewarding. On the other hand, stress inducing emotions like fear, anxiety, and doubt can diminish motivation. With these, the stress hormone cortisol comes into the picture. And when cortisol comes in, dopamine goes down. So, ideal state, we should train our mind and our body to emotionally regulate so we can sustain the motivation. And we should give ourselves more opportunities to create dopamine during our journey to success so we can keep fueling our motivation. I touched on a very simple strategy for emotional regulation in an earlier session of mine, episode 4, Build the Most Resilient You. My regular listeners may recall this, and if you don't, please do go refresh your memory by going back for another listen. If you are a new listener joining today, thank you. And I would also ask you to please go back and listen to some of my earlier sessions. And I am sure you will find helpful insights as we focus on strategies to keep our mind in an optimally healthy space so you can continue being your best self. Having said that, I also have the intent of deep diving into strategies for emotional regulation in a future session. Today, though, I do want to take a moment to talk about fueling motivation with dopamine. Dopamine, as we know now, is what makes us feel good when we see or receive results for what we've put in the effort for. It is our body's reward system. You give it what you determine as a result, and it makes you feel good. So, if we go by the strategy of success comes at the end of the effort, you're now at the mercy of however long it takes for you to complete and the impacts and pivots of any obstacles you will need to overcome and mitigate for you to get to that end goal. A mindset of determination and discipline and grace and growth can be given the lead in these moments to help you with your drive while your motivations are low. The fact is, though, you move better, you move more effectively when you add motivation to these strong mindsets. So, what can we do? We can change our perspective of success. We can change our perspective of success to an incremental progression on a path. Many of us have seen those motivational and inspirational quote that says, success is a journey and not a destination. How many of us truly embrace it and live it? Living it is where you can become a dopamine creating machine. When you embrace an approach where the journey itself is a source of dopamine release rather than solely the destination, you are now cultivating a mindset and lifestyle that values and finds joy in the process of achieving goals. This shift not only enhances daily motivation, but it also leads to a more fulfilling and sustainable way of living and working. And how can we do this? What we can do is incorporate into our daily lives ways to see success in everyday progressions versus a grandiose end state. The first way we can do this is where we embrace the approach of let it flow. Every time I think of this concept, I'm reminded of Tai Chi, that martial art. It always comes to my mind. I was watching a program once upon a time where the narrator kept referencing to the movements as powerful because the person is utilizing the direction of the flow of energy versus resisting it. So essentially, what happens is, let's say somebody's coming at you, instead of resisting them, you utilize their energy coming at you and you take them down at the direction that they're coming at you with. So you're essentially using that entire energy, their energy and your energy, to take them down. Totally makes sense as a fighting skill. But what we also know is flexibility and adaptability in going with what's coming at you as a mindset, which is an asset, even as a life skill. Now, when we look at this concept from a psychological perspective, it is how you're interacting with an activity. Are you fighting it or are you going with it? How are you interacting with the activity is what is going to determine your state of flow. When you're in the flow, when you're going with an activity, this is where you're so engrossed in that activity that everything else goes and disappears. The activity should be just challenging enough to be engaging, but not so difficult that in your mind it starts becoming frustrating. Activities that allow you to enter this state can naturally increase dopamine levels as enjoyment and engagement in the task provides intrinsic rewards. Simply put, this is where you're doing and what you're doing does not feel like work. It is something that keeps you happy just because you are doing the activity. Let me give you guys an example of a client of mine for whom this approach of flow worked so well. We will name my client Ken. To give you a little bit of background, we were working on stress reduction strategies for Ken. And we were working on identifying something that Ken could incorporate into his daily life. And what Ken landed on was something he wanted as a long held desire. Ken always wanted to have his own vegetable garden. And being mindful that we were creating an activity that was intended to reduce his stress levels, we structured it with a mindful approach and the flow concept in mind. What this simply put means is he was creating a way to enjoy every step of the journey versus when he finally got to pick his ripe vegetables to use in his kitchen. So, how did all of this go? Turned out, when his perspective shifted from to being mindful and valuing and enjoying every part of the process, his vegetable garden became his passion and his source of peace and calm. For Ken, gardening is a perfect blend of physical activity, mental engagement, and emotional connection with nature. The process of nurturing the plants from seed to full grown vegetables required him to give very precise attention to detail, from how he prepared the soil to how he managed pests. This level of involvement required him to have focus and skill, which kept Ken thoroughly absorbed. When Ken was in his garden, he always shared he lost track of time. His mind was so completely focused on the tasks at hand, where he was carefully spacing seedlings or ensuring that each of his plants got enough water and nutrients. The complexity of these tasks were perfectly suited to his skills, and it provided just enough challenge to keep him engaged without causing frustration. This balance is crucial for maintaining that state of flow. The rewards of gardening were so deeply satisfying for Ken. The immediate pleasure of seeing a well maintained garden and the anticipation of an eventual harvest. Even small successes like noticing new growth or successfully treating one of his plants not looking too healthy brought him a sense of achievement. These successes were not just milestones, they were moments where he got dopamine releases. And this consistently elevated Ken's mood and kept him motivated. The garden, in Ken's experience, was not just a place where he grew his vegetables, his food. It was a sanctuary where he found joy, satisfaction, and an ongoing sense of accomplishment, all because he saw the entire process as what he was passionate about and not just the eventual harvest he was going to get out of all of it. Ken's example also takes us seamlessly into our second approach, which is also targeting intrinsic motivation. You can see with Ken, as he got into the process of creating and cultivating his vegetable garden, he was becoming passionate about it. When you align your activities with your personal values, passions, and interests, you are doing what your body needs to create dopamine. This keeps you inherently and intrinsically motivated. When your work or tasks are intrinsically rewarding, the motivation to keep doing it comes from within us. And each step in the process can keep triggering dopamine. So, what does this tell us? It tells us we can keep fueling our motivation by finding personal meaning in our tasks or connecting them to our broader life goals, values, and passions. The third approach is where you celebrate progress and embrace setbacks. Celebrate every incremental progression towards your goal. Recognize it and embrace every setback with grace and an opportunity to refine your strategy so you can keep progressing towards your goal. Recognizing progress regularly can make the process feel rewarding and continuously triggers that dopamine release. When setbacks come, see it as opportunities for growth. It keeps the journey interesting and rewarding. This shift in perspective can help maintain dopamine levels by fostering a very positive, growth oriented approach to obstacles. So, if we keep it simple and adopt these three proven strategies, the journey towards any goal can become a consistent source of dopamine release, making every step motivating and enjoyable. In essence, Motivation is a multifaceted phenomenon that incorporates aspects of psychological states, emotional influences, and cognitive mindsets, all aimed at initiating, directing, and sustaining behavior. So, long story short, what do we know? We know dopamine high, motivation high. We know if we focus on keeping our emotions regulated, to keep our stress inducing emotions low and positive emotions high, it'll keep our motivations high. We know if we focus more on the intrinsic motivators and less on extrinsic motivators, we can keep our motivations high. We know if we keep our mindset and approach to success as a journey to stimulate consistent dopamine release, we can keep our motivations high. So, here are a few effective ways to promote dopamine release during our journey of everyday life. First, small goals. So you can keep the dopamine system engaged by offering frequent rewards or successes that maintain your effort and focus. Two, self care acts of self recognition and rewards, like taking a short break or treating yourself to something you enjoy after completing part of a task. This encourages the brain to continue releasing dopamine as it starts associating the ongoing effort with positive outcomes. Three, incorporating activities you enjoy in the pursuit of your goals. For example, it could be as simple as listening to your favorite music while working on a task. This can make the process in itself rewarding, and it fosters a positive emotional state that boosts dopamine release. Four, and I will bucket a few things we've talked about time and time again in our sessions: mindfulness or meditation, exercise. These are all very potent stimulators of dopamine release. Five, certain foods are known to support dopamine production, unless you're allergic to it. If you are, stay away. If you're not allergic, then please do consider foods such as almonds, bananas, avocados, eggs, beans, fish, chicken. They can all increase the availability of the raw materials needed for dopamine synthesis by our brain. Incorporating these foods into your diet can enhance the dopamine release levels and thereby inherently impacting your motivation. And with that, let's wrap up today's episode. I would ask us to remember, though, that motivation isn't constant. It ebbs and flows. It's in a pendulum, and that's perfectly okay. The key is to understand what sustains your drive and motivation, and how you fuel it is what helps you when it starts going down. The key point, having said all this, is to remember that we are not meant to, nor are we designed to, stay in the highest mode of motivation at all times, because we are human. Some days are just meant for you to take it easy, for you to give yourself grace of downtime. So your brain, your mind, your body can rest and regenerate. And then you can come back to whatever it is that motivates you with as much drive as you want the next day. Thank you for tuning in to Catalyze Yourself. I'm your host, Gayathri, and I'm so grateful you have chosen to spend your time with me on this topic. I am also a life and leadership coach, and I do personal one on one coaching for those who are ready for a coach to help them shift the trajectory of their life. If you're ready to explore, please do connect with me. You can reach out to me through LinkedIn or Instagram. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to these podcasts. Until next time, seek out moments of happiness as you live your daily life. Keep catalyzing your motivation and keep pushing towards your definition of success.